After giving you a bit of a glimmer of hope over this past month, right? Winning 3 games in a row, trying to end on a 4-game winning streak, trying to honor all of us who had the Saints season win total at 8 with a nice little push, a nice little addendum to the bank account there. The Saints put on a masterclass in how to frustrate your fan base in a game that didn't really mean anything. That's the most fascinating part about this. There were no playoff implications. You were already eliminated. It means nothing for the draft. You have no draft picks. Like, there were no real stakes in this game, and yet you leave and you are angry, like legitimately angry, and you are right to be angry. This should have been a happy-go-lucky affair in the season on a positive note. Beat a bad Carolina Panther team. Instead, you end up getting swept by the Carolina Panthers. They now beat you 3 of the last 4, despite being one of the worst teams in the NFL during that stretch. And what ensued really was the football equivalent of watching like a train wreck or like an awful movie where maybe even in the beginning you were a little, it intrigued you a little bit, which it felt really good in that first drive. Andy Dalton comes out 4 of 4. Chris Olave touchdown. Oh, okay, man. Yeah, this was very much going to be the victory lap to end this year that was going to launch you into next year with positive momentum, an 8-9 record, and maybe feeling pretty good about where you stood. What's wild is that after that opening 5 minutes, what happened over the remaining 2.5 hours did the complete opposite. Again, a masterclass in finding ways to disappoint. It managed to make me feel worse about the future and current setup of the team than I had at any other point this season, which is probably a bit absurd when you look at the fact that this team was 4-9 at one point. So you had that beginning, man. You score the touchdown, and then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And all of a sudden, when you look up from this just ineffectual offensive nightmare, you look at the stats, and you realize you just lost to Sam Darnold going 5 of 15 for 45 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 picks. You lost an NFL game in which Sam Darnold completed 33% of his passes for 43 yards and 2 interceptions. That is hard to do. The defense was spectacular. I feel like that is, again, I probably overuse this, but that is the Ron Burgundy talking to Baxter. At a certain point, maybe you're not even mad, you're just impressed. Like, you have to go out of your way to try to find a way to lose that game. And so, like I said, the defense was spectacular. The offense was horrible. And in that way, this single game was kind of a microcosm of the season as a whole. As this is a Saints team that just could not figure it out consistently offensively, and actually got better and better on the defensive side of the ball as the year went on. So, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to spend a ton of time on yesterday's game because, quite frankly, there's not a ton to talk about. And also, quite frankly, I think you're looking at a team that is going to undergo some pretty major change over the offseason, right? So anything you are trying to draw from yesterday could be made moot by whatever personnel decisions to be coming down. So we'll be talking more about what the future of this team looks like over this hour. But before we look forward, I do want to look back, and I do want to shout out all of the Who Dat Nation, the New Orleans Saints faithful, who in 2022, 2023, right, an advanced year in which we're on the edge of AI and commercial space travel, going back to the moon, an age of wonders. The entirety of human knowledge is in your pocket at any given moment. You can 3D print anything in the world, right? Like, the things that we are on the edge of accomplishing as a human race, they boggle the mind. And in this year, shout out to you Saints fans who just watched an entire season of football with Dennis Allen as your head coach and Andy Dalton as your quarterback. If you would have told a Saints fan 5 years ago they would have Dennis Allen as their head coach and Andy Dalton as their quarterback, they would have thought you were lying, that you were describing some sort of awful future hell in which some reality that can never come to pass. And I still don't exactly know how it came to pass, right? It took Sean Payton getting tired, retiring out of nowhere, basically forcing his way out of New Orleans. It took Jameis Winston looking like the guy, but then breaking his back. And I don't know what, it took Andy Dalton going to Dallas, like going all over. It's wild what led you here. And again, it's not even that either of these guys were awful, right? Like Nathaniel Hackett, that's awful. Russell Wilson, that's awful. But it has got to be the most generic white bread placeholder quarterback coach combination potentially in NFL history. And what it means now is you've had three bad offensive seasons in a row, right? A third wasted Alvin Kamara prime athletic age season in a row. And as Nick Underhill points out, if the offense wasn't a complete waste of space, well, this season could have been quite different as the Saints lose games in which you gave up 7 points, 13 points, and 17 points. That, my friends, is the difference. Even if you win 2 of those, you're in the playoffs. That's 9-8 versus 7-10. If you win all 3 of those games, which in the NFL you honestly should, you're 10-7. Winning the division. It's incredibly frustrating and disappointing to look back. And the problem is that the future doesn't look too bright, right? Like, I don't know. I hate to be the one who sit here and tell you this, but there's a pretty good chance that Andy Dalton and Dennis Allen could be your quarterback coach combination again next season. In fact, assuredly Dennis Allen's going to be the head coach. It's just a question of whether or not you can find an answer at quarterback outside of Andy Dalton. So why don't we do this? Coming up next, let's start to talk about what's next, right? The latest on Sean Payton, Mike Thomas's future, Cam Jordan's future, what the goals are for this offseason, a little bit about what the cap looks like, and give me your takes from yesterday's game, from this season as a whole. How are you feeling about your New Orleans Saints? You go to youtube.com/1045ESPN if you want to get in the chat and get your comments in there, and we'll get to them. And, look, we're going to have a fun Monday eventually, right? We're going to talk Natty, weekend winners, all this other happy stuff. But for now, we do have to slog through, again, a game in which you lost to Sam Darnold, completing 33% of his passes for 43 yards with 2 picks. Boggles the mind, defies any logic. So get him in. And what comes next for your New Orleans Saints right here on Off the Bench? Before we look at what comes next, I would ask you boys, Mario, obviously you call the games for the New Orleans Saints, head of the Spanish broadcast there, and Danny, you are a diehard Houdat as well. Takeaways. What's your main, kind of sum it up, how do you feel about this season? Give me an emotion, a moment, something you're frustrated with, something needs to be fixed, anything. Your main takeaways from this year.
Well, it started so good in Atlanta, 1-0. You win that game in comeback fashion. Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas. But, injuries once again rear their ugly head. And the Dennis Allen era, not off to a really good start. They have a lot of questions, starting with the coaching staff, who you're going to retain. But you finished the season with some momentum. They deserve credit for that, especially defensively. So hopefully you can build off of it. And hopefully the young talent that kind of emerged both sides of the ball, Jawan Johnson, Alante Taylor, Ellis had a great season. Guys like that, hopefully you can carry over some of the positive. But that being said, a lot of questions kind of across the board.
Daniel, what about you? How are we feeling?
Not a great year. Andy Dalton, I'm like that boy Wolf said on Twitter. He didn't play bad this year, but I'm like over the experience and I'm ready for something new.
I know. It's weird, man. It's not even Andy Dalton's fault. It's tough to exactly see why it feels so much worse than it maybe would be. Like maybe if a young quarterback had played to this level, it would be much more exciting because you could see flashes of potential where you're like, oh man, this guy can maybe grow into being that guy consistently, and then maybe you have your guy. There's no belief that Andy Dalton's going to improve, right? There's no belief that he's going to grow. And so when it's good, it's like, well, and it never really went to great, but when it's good, it's like, okay, sure, that's good. That's probably going to allow you to win some close games. When it's bad, which happened far too often this year, it feels even worse because it feels like you're just like spinning your tires. You're just, paddling but going nowhere.
Well, the
in a
play
lot of ways.
calling was a big slump for the.
Yeah, Carmichael's done. I
He's
mean,
gotta go,
we've had Underhill
go.
on here every single Tuesday, and he's been intimating this, right? Basically saying that, like, I mean, you just look at the offense. There's all kind of questions. I think you ran like 86 play action passes this year, even though you want to be more of a running team. I read that on New Orleans Football Day. 86. Even last year, which is last in the league by a wide margin. Even last year, I think you ran like 130 or something. You used motion, pre-snap motion, less than anybody in the entire NFL. So at a time when offenses are trying to create matchup advantages and get defenses on their heels with pre-snap motions and other looks, you're just kind of sitting there lining up and deciding to play, and you look like a team that is just not dictating to the defense and is just taking what it gives you. I mean, again, your best playmakers you can't take advantage of. Alvin Kamara, this was a guy who seemed like he was on a Hall of Fame track and now was just completely wasted for another year. And if you watch Kamara play yesterday, it's not like he doesn't have the ability, right? I mean, look at some of the plays that he made at a certain point. And look, I'm not an NFL offensive coordinator, so I don't know exactly what the answer is. Is it more screens, like whatever the case may be? At a certain point, you saw the elusiveness yesterday. You saw the power. You saw how dangerous he can be. At a certain point, it's your job, and not at a certain point, from the base, it's your job to unlock that offensive potential in your best players, and they did not do that again with Alvin Kamara. And so I'm when we think about what comes next, yes, the first thing first has to be to find an offense, right? Coach and quarterback. Who's going to be your philosophical leader, and then what are you going to do at quarterback? Do you try to move heaven and earth? And look, I'm not overly, when people talk about the cap numbers, I'm not overly concerned about the cap numbers. They already made a big move with Mike Thomas, which we'll get to in a second, that tells you what's going to happen in his future. And we all know about the Saints' manipulation of the cap, right? Even last year, they were in dire straits, and they were pursuing Deshaun Watson, who costs the entire galaxy, basically. So, like, do you try to get after some free agent quarterback, I mean, look, I don't know what Lamar Jackson's futures hold. I threw a tweet out there the other day that, like, look, if Baltimore does not want to pay that man, I will give that man everything he wants and then some. And a lot of people are kind of balking at that and say, well, that's not the way to win a championship. That's not this or that. And I understand that to a point. But I also think to win a championship, you have to have the quarterback position figured out. And I mean, Lamar Jackson's an NFL MVP. I get all the concerns that you have, but he would be an instant, massive upgrade. Like that would make you a playoff team, likely, right? And that's how you win a Super Bowl. You make it to the playoffs first. So, but whatever. I doubt that's actually going to happen, right? When push comes to shove, I don't think the Ravens are going to, like, let him walk. And so, what do? Do you get one of these kind of middling free agent guys? Like if a Daniel Jones becomes available, boys, are we ready for that? Even though Giants making the playoffs, maybe Daniel Jones not going to be on the table. But there are quarterbacks like him that will be out there. Do you go with like a second-round project, like an Anthony Richardson or somebody, and then maybe Andy Dalton comes back and you wait? Either way, you got to find a coach and you got to find a quarterback that can get more, and win a coach. I'm talking about an OC. That can get more out of this offense than what you got this year. Mar, are you one to add in here? I can't tell. Are you just staying ready?
Not really, but I will.
Okay.
But I will
Sorry,
say
I misread it.
It's all good. I will say that I'm not an offensive coordinator either, like you were saying. But Kamara scoring 4 touchdowns all season is criminal. Like he was sitting on that 72 for a really long time. Didn't even get the record, which is a tragedy.
We saw him score, 5 on Christmas Day 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Was it 5 or 6?
6 in one game.
6.
Yeah.
6 touchdowns in one game. And Carmichael just produced 4 in a season. And in a season which he was healthy. He only missed, a couple games this year? Unreal. And so what does the future hold? Because, Mari, the only thing that kind of upsets me right now about the Saints' future is you're right. There are young players to be excited about, right? Raheed Shaheed, as an undrafted free agent, be at the top of this list for me. That is a guy that is your diamond in the rough find here. Certainly, you mentioned Juwan Johnson. Caden Ellis, even though he's going to be a free agent right now. So all of a sudden he's got his value up. You're going to have to figure out what to do with him. Pete Werner. So there are nice pieces. The problem is what happens to your older nice pieces? Because Mike Thomas is gone. We can get into this. Again, New Orleans Football, they do probably the best cap work out there. They have a very easy to understand write-up where Mike Thomas agreed to rework his contract. He has reduced next year's base salary from $15.5 million to $1.1 million. He got added a $31 million. It got converted. That money did to a $31 million roster bonus due March 17th, and he was given a $900,000 signing bonus to make this deal. You don't really need to worry about the numbers too much. Basically, all this does, it allows the Saints to cut him before June 1st, and it spreads that $28 million cap hit over 2 years instead of eating it all at once. So you'll be at about, I think it's $12 million this next year, $14 million the year after that against the cap from Mike Thomas that will no longer be on your team. When you're like, well, T-Bob, why did he agree to help out the Saints, right? If he's going to be due that money no matter what. Well, he got an extra. Imagine this. Your contract in the situation has gotten so bad that the team has to pay you an extra $900K just to walk away while still getting all the money you're owed, right? Still getting that $30 million, but here's an extra $900K so we can change the timing of it. So he agreed there, and this allows Thomas to hit the market early and then, find whatever his next step is. What sucks is I just feel like, Mike Thomas is going to go somewhere and absolutely ball. He's going to retain the form that once had him on a Hall of Fame path. And the entire Mike Thomas situation is just one of those situations where it's so infuriating. You want to yell and scream, and I want to blame someone, but I don't even know. Like, I'm not even sure where do we lie the blame? Because in a situation like this, there's so many culpable hands. Like, certainly Mike himself deserves a lot here, right? We all know that he did not handle that injury correctly at all, and it cost him a year of football. The Saints medical team is culpable in this, in that they have had a spotty history over the last few years on both the football and basketball front. CD gets some for getting two in Mike Thomas's head, and we'll talk about CD. I don't know if we're still down with CD or not after some comments he had on New Orleans versus Philly. Management not being able to bring Michael Thomas back into the fold. The coaching staff not being able to reintegrate him. Like, whatever the case may be, it's just so crappy because what you had here was legitimately, and look, I could say Alvin Kamara was on a Hall of Fame track. That's debatable. Mike Thomas, not debatable. Objectively, had the best first 4 years of a career that the NFL has ever seen. I mean, we are talking about a guy that was setting literal NFL records. And I mean, like, look at these stats. His rookie year, 92 catches for over 1,100 yards. Then the next year, 104 for over 1,200 yards. Then 125 for over 1,400 yards. And then he signs the big contract that offseason. What does he do the next year? He pays it off. 149 catches, 1,700 yards. 1,700 yards in a 16-game season with 149 grabs. 92, 104, 125, 149. Since that moment, over the last 3 seasons, he's played in 10 games and has 56 catches. That's wild. 4 years of stats that we've never seen before and likely will never see again. And then 3 just completely lost years in what should be his physical prime. And it's going to be wild if he never gets back to that level. Now, maybe this is a bit like Moss's sojourn in Oakland, where he kind of lost himself and then he comes back with the Patriots to show, no, I am one of the best receivers of all time. And I would hope that for Mike Thomas, because that is a man who was once, like I said, a surefire first ballot Hall of Fame type of guy. And if he never gets back to that, he will just become a footnote in history. Still have an NFL record, which is nice, but he will not be talked about amongst the greats. So, like, that's why I'm excited for the young players. But what happens to Mike Thomas? What happens to Mario Davis? One of the best deals in the NFL. That man should be allowed to go find whatever is best for him out there. What happens to somebody like Cam Jordan? The heart and soul of this team for about a decade now. A man who, if nothing else, another guy, Hall of Famer, who has done everything right. They say the best ability is availability. Cam Jordan plays like over 90% of the snaps every single year. He never misses practice. He is, if you were a coach and you were to craft a human being that you wanted to be the leader in your locker room, you would craft Cam Jordan. And after the game, he was asked about what he cares about most. He said a Super Bowl. And then he tweets later on, don't know if I've said it enough, but thank you, Who Dat Nation. Y'all really the best fan base. I don't know what the future holds, but y'all ride with us every season. Even today, the Dome was rocking. Sucks to say, but next year got to be the year for us. Who Dat levels. That sounds like a man who sees that maybe his time in New Orleans has finally come to an end. I mean, the Saints will want to hold on to him, but I wonder if he wants to remain. And I would not fault him if he did not. He's 36 years old. He's given everything that he has to this game. He's been so close to a Super Bowl, only to get cheated out of it by the refs and the no call. Like, this is a man who wants that Chris Long experience, right? Go at the end, join with the team, and find a way to put on a ring and lift that Lombardi trophy. It's a sport he's committed his entire life to. He wants to see if he can reach the pinnacle of the sport. And there's also another quote from Cam in the post-game that I just want to play. It doesn't really flow necessarily what we're talking about, but you can see Cam still a little upset as well with how Sean Payton conducted himself in his retirement.
Into year 12, locker room is always going to change. That's from, you see superstars across the league get traded or whatever it is, cut, traded, end up to another team, demand a trade, whatever that is. You see coaches who say they're going to be there, end up retiring or wanting out or whatever it is. There's always going to be a locker room change.
Yeah. Coaches who say they're going to be there end up retiring or running out. And that's exactly what Sean Payton did. He saw the writing on the wall and he's out. Make no mistake, Sean Payton come back ain't happening. It was a fun couple weeks where we tried to convince ourselves and a fun couple news stories. And again, there are some members of Payton's team or NFL shadow brokers that were putting that idea out there, I think for leverage and whatnot. But look, the bidding war's already begun. The Broncos, the Saints have already agreed to let the Broncos interview him. Who knows? The Rams could potentially come open. Like, there's jobs throughout the NFL. Payton's not coming back to New Orleans. So why should Cam? When again, like you said, locker room change, there doesn't seem to be any great hope for the future. So yes, good young weapons. But again, I don't know what happens to the rest of these guys. I don't even know what happens to Will Lutz. You do $4 million next year. A guy who once looked like a top 3, top 5 kicker in the NFL, had a really bad year this year, culminating in costing you that game yesterday. So bad teams find a way to lose, and that's something that the Saints have consistently done this year. They have found ways to lose. And, Mickey Loomis, we said it, the old triumvirate, right? Loomis, Payton, Breeze. One member fell, the other two held on okay. The next member falls. It's all down to Loomis, the money man, the Crassus in this equation. We said this is what ultimately would define his legacy. Well, in year one, that legacy left a lot to be desired, and now he has a seemingly impossible problem to solve. How do you find a coach? How do you find a quarterback? How do you rebuild a roster when you don't even have a first-round pick and you're way over the cap? Loomis is going to have his work cut out for him. We will see. All right, boys, final thoughts on the Saints. Mario, what you got?
You guys keep asking a bunch of questions like during the break, like quarterback, coach. Obviously, all that needs to be addressed. But I'd just say anything's on the table. Like, if they want to go get Derek Carr, I'm okay with that. If they want to throw the book at Lamar, like you've suggested, I'm okay with that. Like, anything is on the table. I'm not very picky with what the Saints want to do. This is a very exploratory time for them, I think.
Yeah, just experiment a little bit, Over the shirt, under the shirt, whatever the case may be. We're just figuring this thing out. Danny, what do you got?
If Sean Payton's a definite no, I'm going after Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, okay.
I love the fact what he did at San Francisco. He turned around their team, and they're now like they were horrible before he got there.
Yeah, for those that don't know, because San Fran is traditionally one of the best NFL franchise in NFL history, they had 8 losing seasons in a row when Jim Harbaugh got there. And in the first 3 years, he took them to 3 NFC championships in a row, including one Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah,
So,
I'll never forget what he did to the Saints. Like that game burns in my
Mm.
mind forever. That's more heartbreaking than the Nolan no call.
Is that was Harbaugh was the coach at 11, right? With Alex
Yeah,
Smith and Vernon
2011.
Davis and everybody? Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's more heartbreaking than Nolan no call, but it definitely hurt.
That team would for sure won Super Bowl.
Well, yes, that was the best offense the Saints ever had. It was maybe the best offense in NFL history. Maybe, now that we got freaking the Kansas City Chiefs doing ring around the rosy on NFL fields and Patrick Mahomes kind of sleepwalking his way to a 1 seed and 5,200 yards, I don't know if it's still the best offense that the NFL's ever seen, but certainly that year with Darren Sproles, they're all kind of crazy first down statistics. So I think they got like more first downs than any team in NFL history. It was amazing. Okay, that is interesting though, Danny, because again, I don't think there's any way Dennis Allen gets fired because of how the Saints operate, and because there's going to be so many firings here on Black Monday. That's like there's kind of a limited candidate pool. But like I said, if Sean Payton wants to come back, you bring him back. I do wonder if Jim Harbaugh, like if you thought he could be the guy, or because how would this work? If you were going to go after Harbaugh, you would be putting feelers out there secretly, right? You couldn't let your interest be known publicly, otherwise Dennis Allen would know, like something's up. So ideally, if you've done the shadow lord work and the back channel conversations, and if Harbaugh is interested and would agree to come, then that might be a coach worth making that move for. Remember, Harbaugh's denial the other day was anything but a denial, as he said, who knows what the future holds. But I'm a Michigan man, and those who stay will remain champions. Okay, well, true, not true. I don't know. What was it? Trimridge said, didn't Sean Payton say he'd only be interested in returning to NOLA if DA steps down? He won't be the one to get him fired or me situation. I missed that. I missed that quote. If that's,
I don't think he's ever said that. He just hasn't directly commented on it in respect to.
No, why would he? Why would he comment on it? If you're a head coach, you cannot comment on another man's job. That's like a head coaching honor amongst thieves rule number 1. You never comment on another man's job when he still has that job, especially not if you're Sean Payton and you and Dennis Allen have been, co-workers, brothers in arms for many, many years. You're going to snake his job. I mean, why would he want to come back to New Orleans, though, honestly? I mean, there's no quarterback, and there's not great resources to find that quarterback of the future.
But he already is in a establishment here. Like he's already familiar with everything.
Yeah,
he already knows the relationships.
Yeah, but isn't that
Exactly.
but is that a positive or negative?
It's a positive in that if he doesn't find a spot that he absolutely loves, the familiarity, like Danny's saying, might be an advantage for the Saints.
Yeah, but what I'm saying isn't the familiarity kind of what drove him out? Like being in the same place for 16 years. So much of his press conference felt like a man who just wanted to see new walls, new frontiers, been walking through the same doors every day for 16 years. Think about how anybody feels at their job that they've been at for over 5 years, 6, 7, now triple it, right?
I think he just got scared when Drew Brees left.
I think it exhausted him. I think
Yeah.
the year, even though he's denied this, I think the year after Brees left definitely exhausted him. But again, it's even more exhausting now, right? Maybe he got his batteries recharged. I don't have any great hope that he come back here. I would love nothing more than to have that be the case, though. Emil says, Harbaugh's making $7.6 a year at Michigan. You have to pay that man. Well, yeah, obviously, Gail Benson, you got to pay. I mean, she would pay. That's not like, I don't think that's an issue. It's not like coach's salary counts against the cap. So pay him whatever, right? I think it's rumored that Belichick makes like almost $20 million maybe. But I don't think it's public. Hour number 1, closing out. Kick it off with weekend winners next.